welcome back to the Near Memo with Mike Blumenthal, me, Greg Sterling, and today's very special guest, Darren Shaw of White Spark, friend of the Near Media and the podcast. It's great to have you back, Darren, to lend your wisdom and insights on all things local SEO in this changing
Thank
and
you.
dynamic environment.
Thanks for having me. Most of my insight is just secondhand from you guys, but yeah.
Not really, though. I don't think so. Like a loop because we get information from you, which we then feed back to you.
Yeah,
That kind
that's
of
the
thing.
way the universe works. Yeah, it's good.
I want to thank our sponsor, GatherUp, for helping support the podcast, gatherup.com. As you know, Mike was a co-founder of GatherUp. He's no longer associated with them. And there are no kickbacks that you're experiencing, Mike, I don't think, right?
That's correct. I am conflict of interest free.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
As far as
thank
I
you.
can be.
Yes. Thanks to them for sponsoring. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, this is a very interesting time that we're all in with this sort of AI disruption transition. And let's just get a sense from you on the ground of what you're seeing, what your clients are saying, what they're asking for. Just give us a kind of sense of the landscape from your point of view as an owner of an agency.
Yeah, sure. So it's surprisingly quiet. So if you look at my LinkedIn feed, it's just everyone's talking about AI, and that's in our world. But most small business owners surprisingly are not asking us very much about it. They're not like, "Hey, how do I rank in ChatGPT? What are you guys doing for us for ChatGPT?" I'm not seeing a lot of that. A few people are asking about it. If we look in our analytics, we're seeing just a trickle of traffic to our small business websites from ChatGPT. Of course, we know that people will do research on ChatGPT and then do a branded search in Google. So a lot of the potential ChatGPT traffic isn't covered there, but a lot of our clients will ask like, "Hey, how did you hear about us?" And so we are getting a little bit where people will say, "Yeah, well, I ran a search on ChatGPT looking for dentists in my area and you were recommended." So it does come up a little bit, but it's pretty quiet from our clients. There's not a lot of people asking about it yet.
But as we sort of discussed in the green room or before we started recording, my research with small businesses, it's almost the case that to a person they're all using some AI
Yep,
tool for certain things.
for sure.
Whether it's marketing or in their personal lives or whatever. And they're obviously not kind of transferring that experience to their customers and saying, "Hey, to you at least, I'm doing this kind of thing. I expect my customers might be doing it. How do we address that behavior?"
I think it's because if you look at the most common use case, people are using ChatGPT more for informational queries. It's not the most awesome local search experience. So like the businesses returned sometimes are questionable. Like I find Google is a better platform. And so for our clients that have hired us, mostly we're working on their Google business profile. We're trying to get them ranking in Google. That's their focus. That's been their lead source for 20 years. They're really focused on, and that's what they've hired us to do. And so maybe that's why they're not coming to us. Maybe they're thinking about it, but it's just not a huge topic of conversation with our clients. And I think it's because the local search experience is still leaves something to be desired, and Google is still the king of local search. That's why I think we're not hearing a lot about
Other channels, though, I mean, you could sort of make the same argument in a way about YouTube or TikTok
it. Yeah,
or social
yeah,
media, that these
yeah.
are places where people learn about businesses, discover information, and then go to Google to get a validation or to learn more. Are your clients expanding their campaigns, their content creation to other channels, or is it still primarily a Google focus?
So that's an interesting thing. I think when you work with small businesses, what you end up with are, if you're a small business and you have hired an agency to help you with your SEO, your local ranking optimization, then you've generally done that because you are so busy. You're just like, I just need to outsource this. I need to give it to somebody else. It is like just getting these clients on the phone with us is very difficult. And so now you start talking about, okay, now Bob, the dentist, you're going to start making videos. They're like, no, I am not. I will not be making videos. I don't even have time to have this 10-minute call with you. And so there are lots of amazing things that we could do to diversify channels of potential lead generation for these businesses, but they're not on these small businesses' radar. It's not a service that we offer, first of all, but honestly, none of our clients are really engaging in that. They're not doing social other than like their receptionist posts some stuff on Instagram or Facebook once in a while, which is mostly useless and not really helping their business very much. And we don't have a single client that I'm aware of that is investing in actually producing content on YouTube. It's great. I want them to do it. We would love for them to do it. We would actually support them with it and try to guide them on it. But it's just a matter of small businesses are busy and they've outsourced this to us. So it's just not really coming up.
So,
Do you think, I mean, I know you guys do a lot of YouTube, and
Yep.
how do you, and I see you on LinkedIn sharing, for example, AI tips.
Yep.
Do either of those generate leads for you directly?
I would say it's been really significant for our growth over the last couple of years at Whitespark. Yes, this like SEO for Whitespark is surprisingly like I'm sure it's a decent channel, but our growth has really taken off since I invested heavily in being active on all the different social platforms, in producing YouTube videos, and you know our support team. How did you hear about us? So often we hear it's YouTube. So I feel like it's a
YouTube
very
of the video platforms is the dominant response you get back of the video platforms.
Yeah, generally if it's LinkedIn, they come directly through me. So they'll come through a DM through me and then I'll set them up. And so how did you hear about us? Well, I follow Darren on LinkedIn and I ended up chatting with him in the DMs about our needs. And then he sent me to you. So, but generally when they're just coming out of nowhere, they either self-serve if they're SEO, they've searched for local rank tracking software. They found us in the search results. They've signed up for an account and they're usually self-serving. But if they're getting on the phone with us, we often hear that YouTube was the source or referral.
And these are small business customers. These are not industry people.
Both.
Obviously.
Yeah, both. I would say, 60% other SEO agencies talking to us about our listing service or our software, 30% small businesses and 10% enterprise.
What's interesting to me is this whole brand question, which has become obviously the talk of the industry in the last 2-3 years as the different revelations about Google's, algorithm and click-throughs and, the importance of brand. Brand has always been important, but it's gotten new relevance in the SEO world. Are any of your small business customers, do you ever have conversations with them about brand, the importance of cultivating a brand awareness or any of that kind of stuff? And
yes, depending on the sophistication of the client. So sometimes we're dealing with a pretty small business. It's a painter. That dude is just out there
trying to get jobs
12 hours a day.
Yep.
He's not thinking about this. But then you have
hardly answering his phone.
Exactly.
Leaving leads on the table.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then
and not calling me back, God damn it.
Exactly. You're trying to get a painter, a guy won't even call you back. So the more sophisticated clients, like lawyers, personal injury lawyers, right? These guys are on top of it. They're really thinking about it. And so certainly I'm having those conversations with our personal injury clients about brand, about Reddit, about like where people are finding us, where do we need to be present, about doing guest posting on legal industry specific websites. Like that's a whole thing for the more sophisticated clients. And so yes, we definitely talk about brand with them, but it depends on the client for sure.
All right. So I mean, obviously that's helped elevate your brand, right? Social media, LinkedIn,
it's been
YouTube.
massive. Yeah. I really think about this from the ChatGPT results. Whitespark enjoys the privilege of being an early mover in the local search space. We have been around since 2010. We launched the local search the local citation finder. And so that kind of put us on the map. And that's where I met Mike Blumenthal. And then I started doing stuff with Local U. And then I started producing my own content. And so being so early and being kind of recognized as a listings company, a citation company, now that citations are hot again, when people go to ChatGPT and they search, we are often mentioned. And I think that long history
brand authority
being around for so long is so valuable. So it's interesting to think about how that might affect a brand new business breaking in. It's going to have a hard time building up that corpus of knowledge on the internet about the brand, because ChatGPT is likely to return the more prominent brands. So prominence is a much harder thing to build today, I think, and incumbents that have been around for a long time will benefit.
Well, so go, Mike, did you have a question?
I'm just curious how you theorize. I assume ChatGPT is using Bing's index, which has some sort of prominence factors in it, right? Their search index. So do you see that? And do you look to influence it the same way you influence Google's index.
Yep. I think that's RAG, right? So generally you run a query like, which companies are known or which companies I'm looking to build more citations for my brand. And then it doesn't have to go to Bing. It's just pulling it out of its knowledge, right? So it's just the LLM data. I don't know what you call it, but basically it's not Bing. Bing is the RAG. It's like the
grounding, the reference point.
It's just
for
double checking
specific queries.
Yeah, so I would say that like we're getting returned out of its existing knowledge, not with an additional bonus search to try and validate the information. So I don't necessarily optimize for Bing. I don't really optimize for anything. It's just happening.
So I just did a query on ChatGPT.
Yeah, what'd you get?
I said, let me give it to you verbatim here. I'm looking for give me an agency referral. I said, I'm looking to build citations. Give me an agency referral. Yep. So number one is Whitespark.
Yes.
And it recommended agencies for citation building. And it gives me location, focus, strength, and URL. Very clear URL. Then Bright Local is number 2. And then another one called Loganix, which I don't know. The Hoth. But you're number 1. So you're definitely going to get, if people do that query, you're definitely going to get referrals from that.
And I can tell you that our listing service is exploding. We just hired 3 new people. The Yagoslav is stressed to the max. We've got so much.
Good, better him than you.
So much business coming in. He's trying to manage it all and juggle all the work and get everything done.
Good problem to have. Good problem to have.
So, and actually, that's why I really believe that it's the ChatGPT returning us when people are running those kinds of queries. We're just taking off right now.
And it's the brand strength behind that is giving you that exposure.
That's my theory anyways. I don't know.
No, I think I think that's right. Anyway,
I think it's Darren's shining personality.
Well, that's part of
I don't know if ChatGPT is attuned to my personality.
That's part of the brand. So let's talk about prominence in a different context. So reviews are part of prominence, the Google, prominence, relevance, and proximity. I think reviews reviews have always been important. Let's put aside the fake review problem, which Google's sort of not. How is this sort of AI shift impacting your thinking about reviews, your advice to clients, what you're doing? The historical advice was focus on Google. That's the dominant platform. That's the one everybody uses. And everything else is sort of nice to have. That's not true anymore, is it?
Well, I don't think it was ever true. Just saying.
Yeah, nothing's ever true. Yeah, that's valid.
Well, but I mean, if you didn't have time if you had to do one, you would do Google, and everything else was true.
And that is the way the industry has operated for sure. And in fact, it's the entire way that we set up our whole service. Like we are focused on helping you rank in Google. And we know that Google reviews are so critical to that. And so our entire strategy as we've developed our service is Google reviews, Google reviews, Google reviews. And that has worked. It's been really helpful. It's definitely helped our clients rank better. Review strategy is super critical. The difference is the changes that are starting to, come in. It's really 2 things. And we are thinking, we're trying to be forward thinking about how we help our clients with ChatGPT and Gemini and AI mode and all these things that are coming. And so getting ahead of that, for us, it's 2 big things. One is first-party reviews. We definitely see AI mode and ChatGPT and Gemini referencing reviews on your own website. And so we have some clients that are not doing that. So I think every small business website should now have a testimonials page or a reviews page where you are embedding first-party reviews. I think it's super critical.
I would suggest it goes beyond that. I think every page should have first-party reviews relevant to that page.
And the widget, yes, agreed. Yeah, and this is actually...
we're seeing that I'm seeing that show up as the results sort of parse down to custom jewelry with Barbara or to, whatever, birthday stones. You're seeing that parse down. So I think you need to think beyond a testimonial page to include it across the website with reviews that are relevant to that page.
Top tips from Mike Blumenthal, fully agree. And also, to our sponsor, GatherUp, it's amazing because, Mike and Aaron Weike have been preaching first-party reviews for the last 8 years, 10 years, I don't know, ever since the beginning. It's like how valuable those first-party reviews. And finally, Mike, you're being vindicated.
I was vindicated long ago when they wrote me a big check.
Okay, all right. That was your vindication. Yeah, that's true. But
how do you do that mechanically though? You've got, you're referring people to Google, you're trying to solicit a Google review, maybe Yelp, maybe TripAdvisor or something else or some other specialized directory, and then you want them to write a first party review that you're going to put on the website. Are you just taking
Yeah.
Google reviews and slapping them on the website? How do you do it mechanically so that you don't like burn your customers out because
Sure. Yeah.
you know
I think that a system like GatherUp is actually kind of perfect for this because a large percentage of people don't feel comfortable leaving a review on Google. Like if you request a review, they're going to be like, well, I don't want to make public with this, but I'll give you my feedback. That's a first party review. And so you get that data. So it's like, hey, how did we do? You get a rating, you get first party feedback. And then at the end of that process, you could be like, thanks so much for your positive feedback. We'd really appreciate it if you left us a review on Google. And then of course you don't want to review gate. So even if
I was going to say, it sounds suspiciously like
I know.
review gating.
If they leave you negative feedback, then you also say, thanks so much for your feedback. We're really sorry. And then somewhere in extremely fine print at the very bottom of that message, you say, and also, if you want, you can leave us a review on Google, but please don't. So that way you get around the review gating.
To me, that sort of shenanigans have never been necessary. My direct experience was and is that most people, when they're ready to complain, want to make sure you heard them. And most people will not leave you a negative review on Google. They don't see the need, right? So just by asking for first-party feedback, allowing people to then go to Google, whether, regardless, most people are decent. They don't want to say bad things in public if they don't have to. There's 5% of the people in the world that are assholes, no question, but they're going to go to Google directly anyways, and you're not going to stop them. And the best thing is to give your clients an outlet where they can express themselves so they don't feel a need to go to Google, right?
Totally valid. And
I don't think you need to then worry about them.
Yeah, 100%. But I think I would challenge your 5% asshole statistic.
It's more like 50%.
I think you might be a little low on that one, Mike.
Well, it depends on what country you live in. I like to think maybe 5 to 10%, but maybe that's, I'm a half full kind of guy.
Most people are sort of have goodwill and are just, they're trying to get their needs met or trying to, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And if you treat them well, then
to Mike's point, that if you're soliciting, like you kind of catch them after their experience, you ask them for feedback. If you never ask and they feel like they need to express their displeasure with whatever service they had, they will go to Google. But when you do ask, you've mitigated that. And so you're going to collect that first party.
Responsive to them, they're more likely to write a better review.
Yeah. But the other thing, to close a loop on your question, so one is the first party reviews and two is diversifying reviews off of Google.
Right.
And so this is actually becoming way more important for us because we're thinking about the future of search. We're thinking about how AI is generating its results, and review diversification appears to be very important within that AI search. And so we are now implementing strategies. It's not Google only. We're trying to rotate our review requests through multiple sites. We're also doing a thing where people that have left us a Google review, we will follow up with them and be like, hey, thanks so much for the Google review. Really appreciate it. If you felt like it would be great to also leave us a review.
Write another review somewhere else. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, so let me ask you about that. Are you doing different things by vertical, by industry? Because certainly,
yes, 100%.
Some directories matter and some verticals and not, and others. Travel's an obvious example, or legal, or whatever. So you have preferred directories, and you're seeking reviews in those places.
Yes, and new research coming soon. I have two data gathering happening right now. One is, it's a really cool thing you can do on Bing. You can go to Bing and you can type in your keyword and search the results. And in the left-hand panel, it shows you Angie's List, Yelp, Facebook, Yellow Pages. You can actually see all the sites that are getting referenced that we know Bing is pulling reviews in. I like that because of ChatGPT and using Bing. And so those gives you a really strong hint about what sites are important in your industry. And then you can do the same thing on Google. So one, you do a search for, let's just call it personal injury lawyers, Dallas. Then you take your top 10 and you take each one of their business names and you search that with reviews. And you can look at two things. One, in the panel for that business, you'll see reviews around the web. So that's telling you what Google what sites Google think are important, and whatever's in the first page of results. Mike, you know that is how they pull in those stars into and how they're referencing and reviews around the web. And so anything that's on that first page, those are sites that Google thinks are important. And you do that across all the 10 businesses, and you start building this database of all the sites that both Bing think are important for your industry and that Google thinks are important for your industry. And so that data research is going on right now at Whitespark. I'll be publishing it soon. You don't have to do all the digging. I would have done it for you.
All right. You'll publish it on the Whitespark Content Hub.
Definitely will be publishing it. I'll be making YouTube videos. There'll be shorts. You'll be all over your LinkedIn. It's going to be on your Facebook.
That's
it's
right.
going to be Darren Show everywhere.
And we'll be sure to write up the results of that in the Near Media newsletter.
Yeah.
So are there other things you're doing for, you talk about reviews by vertical and how you're kind of orienting yourself there. Are you doing other vertically specific marketing moves for your clients that are noteworthy?
I would say no, because the scope of our service is a little bit more limited than like a full service big agency thing. Our price point, as you know, is really reasonable. So we're kind of targeting the small business, which limits our ability. We're really focused on page content, review strategy, and your Google business profile. That's really the limit. What you're talking about, what I would do if for a client that had a much bigger budget, I would be really working on, with digital PR. I would be working on sort of helping the client get placement and mentions on important industry sites. And I do have one larger client that I directly work with where we are doing a lot of that stuff. We're doing digital PR, we're doing outreach, we're really trying to get his prominence on lots of different sites. But for at the agency level, because our price point, we don't even get more than like $1,700 a month. We just don't have the budget or time to invest in that. We're really focused on page content for the majority of our clients.
Well, so let's talk about that. What does that mean for you today? Content is obviously a big topic of a conversation. Helpful content, AI generated content. Google's running around saying there's since 2023, I believe the statistic is there's 45%. I think the number was 45% more pages. I could be wrong about that, but they're saying there's some meaningful number of additional content pages out there that they're seeing, they're crawling or indexing, or they're touching. Content is easy to create with AI, but it's also often generic and mediocre. What is your kind of whole approach now to content in the wake of all the new capabilities and your clients' lack of time, on the other side of that?
Yeah. So we have I feel like we have a great strategy for developing content for our clients. And it's a big part of what we do. If they sign up with us and we're also managing their website, this is basically what we do. This is the main job. Is that step one, we do a bunch of keyword research. And well, let me just say that 90% of the time, we are not writing blog content. We are focusing on service page content. Homepage content and service page content. That's either enhancing existing service pages or building out new service pages. That is where we are very focused. I don't know if you saw, there's some recent news that Google is doing massive de-indexing of the web, lots of pages getting knocked out. And that's just like fluff, right? And so that is not what we're focused on. We are focused on top of funnel service specific content for our small business clients. And that's what we should be focused on, because that's the stuff that will rank. That's the stuff that will actually drive leads. And so our process is this. Step one, we do keyword research on the topic. So let's say we're making a page about dog bite lawyers in Dallas, right? So we're making this page.
These are lawyers that bite dogs, or?
Yes, correct. Yes. So any lawyers that love to go around biting dogs, we write a very specific content about that. No, so again, that was a bad example. But anyways, you get the idea that we're writing a page of content. So step one is keyword research. Then we're really trying to break down like the subtopics, and we look at the corpus of content that's already ranking for this. We will actually use ChatGPT for this, like to try and find more information. And then we generate a series of like, this is what the page should have on it. And then we take what should the page have on it, and we turn that into questions. We actually use ChatGPT to help us form those sections into questions that we can then interview our clients on. Then we do a Zoom call with the clients, and record it and transcribe it. And so this way we get all of the content in their words. So it's information gain. We would not use ChatGPT to write the content. We want to get it in the client's voice, in the client's words. And then we put it on the site, and then we continue to tweak. And then we continue to add frequently asked questions. We try to build out these pages. Most small businesses that come to us, they have a page on a topic and it has one paragraph. If we're lucky, it has like 2 sentences. We do this thing. So we try to make it really, we try to build that out and and another times they don't localize the content. So we make sure that we are covering the city name, the neighborhood names, local landmarks. We just try to build that page out so it's anchored both locally and is very comprehensive and relevant. Because it's interesting, in the world of ChatGPT and AI mode, it's really about content snippets, like blocks. Those blocks will be pulled in individually and referenced in the results. And so we think about that. And I actually think Google's probably been doing that for ages, but people didn't think about it.
Snippets on some level, right?
Snippets are really key. And so...
Right, but it's how Google chunks the information into these sort of logical components, both for search, both for relevance and results back. So it's how they rewrite title tags and
yes, exactly,
meta descriptions as well.
And then structure is very important as well, right? So we think about the whole page structure from top to bottom, and then each snippet, each chunk needs to have a very clearly defined heading that this is what this is about. And then we introduce each chunk, which
so they're self-contained
in a way that makes sense. Yeah.
And do you have a structure top to bottom? I mean, do you have the most important chunks at the top or the most important queries at the top? How do you,
we think about that,
that?
What do we really want to rank for? And we make sure that that is at the top for sure. But I actually am starting to question whether that matters in an AI world, whether it's at the top or the bottom. I feel like that's maybe old school Google ranking thinking.
And how long do you make these pages?
Well, they vary, but they're typically in the 1,500 because we want it to be very comprehensive. And so it ends up growing. So yeah, 1,500 words.
1,500 with 3 or 5 segments, or roughly, what are you talking?
Yeah, I would say, 5, 6. And then we have these different sections. All the different kind of topics are built out. And then there'll be a frequently asked questions at the bottom. And then, of course, page structure is really important. We try to anchor each chunk with a photo and with bullet points. So it's like nice heading, photo, descriptive text. Ideally, you've got a bullet point kind of summary as well.
So how many dog bite lawyers are in the bar? How many dog bite lawyers go into the bar? Kind of.
Exactly. You got it.
Sorry.
Really fixated on that.
Yeah, well, hey, I think
that was
lawyers
a great example. I'm glad I brought it up.
I can't get the image out of my head now. It's Darren's fault.
So you've referenced a number of use cases for AI in your SEO process, and you had a very well received post on LinkedIn about using ChatGPT to generate title tags.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Just kind of
we don't really use it.
Give us a sense of. I mean, you've already sort of done it a little bit, but how are you integrating AI into your local SEO process? What are the key use cases for you? I mean,
yeah, sure.
Sort of alluded to that, but
so we do definitely use it as it's more of a research tool than a writing tool. So a lot of research, so we will take a page and we're trying to build out a page, and then we ask ChatGPT, be like, all right, here's what we currently have. These are the topic areas we want to cover in this page. What are we missing? What else could we cover? So we will ask ChatGPT questions like that, which can also spark ideas. And then we add it to the page and we keep building out the page. We'll also ask it to help us come up with frequently asked questions. We don't rely on it 100%. We will use tools like Also Asked to also generate question ideas, because then it's based off of the people also ask section. And so that it's useful to get actually what Google is showing you, what people are asking. And so we do use AI for that. And we will use AI for page structure, give us some suggestions on the page structure. I actually like my internal linking. I also made another custom ChatGPT prompt that uses deep research that will do the internal linking. So we will use it for that. That's a pretty useful tool that, especially on a small business website, that'll show us how we can interlink all of our key service pages. And you can even get it to crawl your blog and add internal links, which I find pretty useful.
Have you seen ranking improvements from that?
Internal linking? Yes. Yeah. Internal linking is really useful, actually. Yep.
Okay. Mike, any follow-up there?
I am just struggling with technology here, so I'm more focused on making sure my camera is working than listening to Darren. So you'll have to excuse me.
So say something about the this kind of great decoupling thing, that a lot of people are talking about, the gap between impressions and traffic that's starting to show up in people's Google Analytics. Talk about that, and how are you seeing that, and what's your response to that?
Yes, I can definitely speak to that in the sense that, one, we're not really seeing it because we're talking about small business websites that are they're not full of informational content. You see the great decoupling when it's informational content. So Miriam Ellis did some great research for us and published it on the Whitespark blog about AI overviews in local. And so when the keywords have great local intent, there's often not an AI overview. And it's the AI overview that is stealing all the clicks. You don't get a click because the answer's already right there in the AI overview. So,
and you weren't getting clicks before often, right? I mean, the example being the review query that we talked about in the green room. Before, when you typed in brand plus reviews, you'd get a one box with review stars. Now you might get an AIO summarizing reviews from around the web. So you wouldn't have gotten the click to start with. So there's no decoupling. You might still get the call though, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, the great decoupling is extremely great in very informational based websites that were heavily focused on organic results. We are not. We don't help. We really care about ranking our clients in the local pack and ranking them in Google Maps. And that's where all of our focus is. And like I said, we're not really that focused on blog content, informational blog content, that very, very top of funnel. We don't care that much about it because it doesn't generally drive leads. It's like informational stuff. And so for all of our local clients, we're not really seeing the great decoupling, and it's not really impacting our clients because their lead source is typically Google business profiles.
I would argue that in some cases, though, people are talking about the death of kind of educational or informational content that a lot of people were using to build brand or to build awareness. And I would argue that in some contexts, it's still very useful to create that kind of content, because people will go out and try and figure out, solar panels, for example. I put solar panels on my house for a few years ago. And, it's like I knew nothing about them. So I had to do a bunch of research. And at that time it was Google about solar panels. What do I need to look for? What are the considerations, and so on and so forth? That's something I would do on ChatGPT today. But that kind of content, somebody is creating it, and those companies that are creating that are often vendors, and you sort of learn about the vendor as you're learning about the information. If the information is good, they become one of the considerations or one of the potential sources that you go to. And that's not true across the board, but in many instances, it's still a valid kind of approach. But
I would question whether blogs ever served a solid purpose in some local.
Well, not necessarily a blog. I mean, you could do that on a service page.
To some extent, that question has to be raised. Are blogs valuable? If they are valuable, to whom and how? And part of the problem with blogs is, in small businesses particularly, one, they attempted to answer these top-level questions. They maybe did, but they never would have ranked because they're so isolated from the rest of the site. And very few people had a way of integrating them into the information silo so they would rank locally. And to a large extent, Darren's strategy of just focusing on information silos around a given service, it makes a whole lot more sense than blogging. And I think in many local businesses, the idea of a blog should be discarded out of hand.
Well, I'm sure that's true, but you can integrate that content into the site in different ways, obviously.
Well, and you should, if you want it to rank. Although, the question is, going for these high-level information queries, Google isn't going to show your site. They have a few trusted sites that they reference, and you're never going to make it.
Right, but there's still value to creating educational content and maybe putting it somewhere else, maybe putting it on TikTok, or maybe putting it on YouTube, or putting it on Instagram or something like that.
I think there's a strategy. And I actually like blogs more today than I would have 2 years ago. And the reason I like them a little bit more today is sort of just like building out your brand's relevancy and more information about your brand. And this is where we have to think about website structure and content structure. And so let's say, for example, you've got a personal injury law firm. They know that most of their leads are driven from car accidents. So I want to make this law firm website very focused on car accident. And where does that come? It goes from the homepage. You got internal links. You got a block about car accidents that then goes to the service page, and that service page is very well built out. But you could it's almost endless, the different questions, the details, the extra elements that you could talk about. And so we have to pick and choose on what's going to actually make the, but then all that other stuff is a huge opportunity for building out more content. And you can do that in a blog. And it's all about content silos. So from here, from your service page, you reference your top most valuable blog posts and you link them over there. You also link to the blog main category of car accidents. And so you have a whole section of your blog full of all the little things you need to know about car accidents, specifically in your state or in your city. And so there is this sort of like,
but then these blog posts link back to the car accident.
And the blog posts link back to the service page.
Right.
There is great value in that. And actually it allows us,
if you can execute that consistently.
right. And that's where, like, when we have clients that have been with us for 3, 4, 5 years, that's where we start getting into that more extended strategy. But it is valuable. And I think it's particularly valuable in the world of AI search once, you know, the AI LLMs are trying to understand your brand and what you're all about.
Yep.
You just keep hammering those main things that you're just like, keep adding more content and making yourself kind of more and more relevant for it. But you can't bury it in a blog. It has to have that really good information architecture so that it can be crawled and found by the LLMs and by Google and by Bing. If you care about Bing, I guess Bing too.
Well, I mean, Big Places certainly is now relevant again in a way that it hasn't been for a while.
Yeah, it's true.
As we sort of approach the end of the discussion, what's an important thing that we really haven't had a chance to talk about that you're focused on now or that you're doing?
I would say it's diversification, specifically for small business clients. We are really thinking about this within our agency. How do we help our clients get a little bit like out of the world of Google? Because I do think it's going to keep shifting. We're seeing it already. You're feeling it yourself. You often go to ChatGPT to search for things instead of Google. And so where do we help our clients drive leads? And that would be social media is an area we're exploring. Like we talked about earlier, YouTube, I think, is really powerful. It's a great channel. And so just trying to assist our clients with strategies in those areas. And then digital PR, like how can we possibly start doing some localized digital PR for our clients? It would have to be an additional service, but diversification, I think, becomes really important in the coming years because right now, all things Google, it's still going to drive leads. I think it's an okay strategy, but I feel like there's lots of leads to be had from other channels that
For sure.
we want to help our clients with. And so that's how we're expanding our agency going forward.
Just real quickly, people hear that term digital PR and it means how are you defining that? What does that encompass in your mind?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways you can do it. There are localized op-eds that actually work pretty good. So you have let's say it's a plumber. Plumber has really interesting opinions about the upcoming or about the flood that just happened and how that impacted pipes. He can write an op-ed and you can actually submit it to the local newspapers and those can get published there. So I think there's a whole world of local PR that we're just kind of exploring right now. And then there's bigger digital PR where you do mostly, that's like a research piece. And so you will either do a big survey or you do big data gathering from multiple data sources. You will write up major takeaways. Usually it's statistics based. And then you got to do outreach to various reporters and be like, hey, we did this piece and here's some interesting stats. And so it's the problem with digital PR is that it's very expensive. Like basically, if you want to run it now, you can expect to pay roughly $8,000 to $15,000 per campaign. This is one major data piece that you build over the course of a couple of months, then you publish the piece, then you do a ton of outreach. It's very expensive and it's kind of prohibitive for most small businesses, but that's what I mean by digital PR.
And it doesn't necessarily work. I mean, the costs are all front loaded and you may get very limited coverage depending upon whether you've made the right choices about how you present the information.
Yeah. But for the right clients that have the budget, it's a valuable strategy that we're exploring as well.
So we'll be obviously talking to you again in various guises, but let's project into a year and assume that we're sitting here and having a similar conversation next year at roughly the same time. What do you think will be different?
I think it won't be Darren Shaw. It'll actually be Darren Shaw's AI avatar. I'm gonna be somewhere. I'll just have an AI avatar that knows everything about me.
Yeah. Be on a beach somewhere.
What will be different? I think we will be talking talking a lot more about alternative search. I think that some of these things that I hinted at, that expansion into social media and expansion into YouTube, ideally, we will have some information to talk about, like successes we've had with clients by exploring some of these different ways. And then I think it'll be really interesting to see how Google's local results change. Right now, like we can see the informational, like the organic results are absolutely shaken up by AI stuff. But local has been relatively stable, but we're seeing changes. You guys are the ones that bring us the latest insights on that. But I do think that it'll be a lot of integration of AI into local results. And I think it's going to be extremely personalized. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is like, how do you get visibility when results are so extremely personalized? There's no one set of search results for this term. Everyone is going to see slightly different results. So I think those are going to be topics to explore.
I mean, a lot of the personalization is about location and preferences, right? I need something that has
And
these
history,
these characteristics. So, I mean, if you have those capabilities or characteristics and you properly expose them, presumably you'll rank for some of that stuff. What's the one or two things that you think most local SEOs are not doing that they should be doing right now?
I think it's the review diversification. I think a lot of them are still thinking too much about Google with reviews, and they're not working on it. I think the first party reviews is a big one, that you need to actually get those first party reviews on your website. I thought Mike's suggestions around that are brilliant. You need to be doing that. And then I only got one. I think it's that.
Okay, all right.
Everything else is they're generally staying the course, which is about right. And it's really the review diversification. The digital PR, I think you should be thinking about that, but it's
a budget.
We have not cracked the code. We have not figured out how to do that at a price point that makes sense for small businesses.
Right, it's really a budget issue. So my final question is on this whole sort of name debate. Geo, AEO, LLM.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever, all the sort of alphabet soup of all these terms. Where do you come down on that?
My favorite version of all of these terms is SEO.
Right.
And it stands for search everywhere optimization. I think that's the way to go.
That's the Rand Fishkin.
And I love that we don't have to change the acronym.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think did Rand coin that or promote that?
Someone coined it, and Rand is the one that
exposed
shared it. Yeah. Someone else said it, and Rand had shared that. I can't remember. Sorry, Rand has overtaken the...
Well, it's like ranking. It's like a publication that cites somebody else that's the original source and ranks them on Google.
Yeah, we should all know that guy's name and start speaking it instead of Rand.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mike, do you have anything to add or any final questions for Darren?
So when I look at the future, I would like your feedback on this idea. I see that the company that comes up with a full AI to local funnel is the company that is going to win this race 5 years from now, 8 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I see Google's AI currently sort of trailing, but getting better with every iteration. Their local is very good. I see ChatGPT with great top of funnel inquiries, informational stuff, and some hints at lower funnel, sort of would you like to find a place to buy it kind of things. But to me, that's the change we're going to see sooner rather than later, 18 months, 12 months. And Google may or may not fundamentally change the shape of local, but they're going to tie it together better. What is your thought on that as a future?
I do think that's the future. I do think that we are going to see big changes in terms of information discovery and information delivery from these different platforms. And that's where I really think I'm excited to see what happens in local search results. Like we've seen lots of shakeup in the organic, but I'm very excited to see how local actually changes. And I always expect Google to win that because the database of business profiles that they have, it's the richest data set in the world for local businesses, and businesses have been caring about it, have been managing it more so than how many people manage their Yellow Pages listing? Nobody. And so that's why your Google, I really expect to maintain dominance in the local world. And I'm kind of excited to see how local discovery becomes so much more enriched as Google enhances it with AI.
Right. That is their big competitive differentiator right now, is the local stuff.
Yeah,
it's the redheaded stepchild of search, but it is the difference that I think certainly survey data that I've collected seems to point to, and Google seems to understand that now. All the AI examples that they give, almost all of them in their conferences and their PR have a sort of a local dimension. I think that ChatGPT could certainly do a lot better in local if it really put some resources behind that. We'll see whether and how strategic they think local is. I think it's very strategic, and I would like to see them do a better job with it, but we'll see. That remains to be seen.
Well, where will be its data source? Oh, Bing? Good luck.
Well, they use the Foursquare database today. They have
Good
Bing.
luck.
Well,
Compared to Google, Foursquare's database, come on.
I think it's a really interesting question about what pieces of information do consumers really need to make a decision. Clearly, all the data points that Google has about local businesses are not essential. There's a hierarchy of things that people want to see. They want to see images, they want to see reviews. They probably want to be able to get certain kinds of very specific information, depending on whether it's a product or service. I don't think ChatGPT needs to recreate what Google has built. I think they need to get close enough, plus the other experience, to be within striking distance.
Agreed. Yeah. I actually hope Apple does something. I think Apple Intelligence has a great opportunity, but it looks like they're waiting and watching and letting everyone else duke it out, and then they'll swoop in with a good product.
Well, I mean, they were rumored to be considering buying Perplexity, which would be really interesting on multiple levels. But they tend not to make these really high profile acquisitions, which would need to change in order for them to do that.
Although one could envision with Apple, they've obviously invested in their relationship with ChatGPT, and one could envision a ChatGPT Apple flow of information
with Apple Apple feeding into ChatGPT.
Yeah, and ChatGPT fading back into Apple for directions and resources.
They absolutely should do that. They should do that tomorrow. Right. That should be something.
That to me is a very sort of conceivable outcome in this bigger
right, and that would very quickly take them much closer to where Google is, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
It'd be a real threat for Google.
Yeah. Okay, on that note, thank you, Darren Shaw, for a very illuminating interview. Thank you to Gather Up for sponsoring and supporting the podcast. And we will definitely have you back 101 times before next year.
That's so many times. I'm going to be on every episode. All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure chatting with you. I really appreciate and respect all of the research you guys are putting out. It's my number one source. So Near Media, love you guys. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks again.